This is your economic review. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiaga. This is most certainly Business Amma. Now, let's get on to the first issue that we have for you this morning, where 62 million shillings was spent to quarantine KQ staff in 3 months. Now, the airline, which is currently under plan to get nationalized, has revealed that it made the payments to 4 points by Sheraton Nairobi Airport Hotel, 4 points by Sheraton Nairobi Hurlingham Hotel, and Panari Hotel on Mombasa Road in Nairobi on different dates starting March this year. Now, this coincided with a time when the carrier was also cutting workers' pay to preserve cash and stay afloat. The expenditure falling in the months of March 25th to May 26th, a period that saw the government ban international passenger travel and restrictions on domestic movements, forced the airline to opt for cargo operations and special passenger flight operations. Now, following the guidelines of the Ministry of Health, the crew members were subjected to a coronavirus test after backlash by the Kenya Airline Pilots Association, KALPA. In a protest letter, KALPA accused KQ of assigning duties to crew members who are in self-isolation before the completion of the recommended 14-day period. This morning, the question that we're going to start with is, should have the airline looked for cheaper quarantine centers for the crew amid reduced fortunes as a result of the pandemic? Just before we move over to that area, let's look at the selective performance for KQ, the national air carrier, which is just about to get quarantined. You can actually say that even their revenue growth and even their quarterly year-on-year EPS growth, you can actually see how marginal it is, and that has been hit heavily as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, which also takes us to what their quarterly performance has been all the way from 30th June to 31st DEC 2019. Now look at that net income. That's exactly where the conversation point begins, even as you look at what their expenditure has been, because that point tells you that that's where the rain started beating them, to help us understand whether indeed this national carrier, which is cash strapped, should have looked for different options. And as we talk about the expenditure, is Enoch Monari, CPA. Enoch, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Now look at that, 62 million, and I will tell you where it's spent. Panari and Sheraton. Those are what, 5-star entities?
No, I believe airlines normally treat their staff very well, even away from the corona pandemic. And I think we should not be reading so much into this. Didn't expect Kenya Airways to pick them to Tononoka Secondary School for quarantine, definitely. Remember, belong to a union, and it's one of the very strong unions we have around. And was push for some kind of treatment. And remember, the government has a role in. When we were really tired of the lockdowns and all those things, people started pushing the government to open up the country. And one way that the government could positively show that they are actually willing, of course, to business start was to allow the airlines, of course, to fly in and out of the country. And that, of course, you don't want their staff to be exposed to COVID by, of course, not being quarantined, and of course, the kind of interaction they have in right. And of course, the cost has to be there. We've spent so much. I mean, when you look at how much we've spent with KEMSA and getting the kids, it's a lot of money. It shows you how expensive the to businesses and even the government. So we just hope that helped KQ, of course, be able to run smoothly as an airline, and we can be able to turn around KQ and nationalize it, like we said before.
Yes, Enoch, but is somebody not going to look at this expenditure and say, but even during this time, maybe there could have been a cheaper option? Because, well, for an entity that is struggling just for cash, and Enoch, I want to take you back to exactly where they are right now, because even during this period, they had plans to lay off 1,500 workers. Fine. Don't you think that maybe with the options that were available, as a manager for KQ, really trying to get whatever money that you can get, that maybe you should have looked at this 62 million and said, probably can pay people now. Let me look for cheaper options somewhere else. Was it not something that even the employees themselves could understand?
Will you understand as an employee, Simba, if you were to be quarantined at Ronoka Secondary School?
If I'm going to get paid and not get laid off during that period.
No, you see, you have to look at the exposure, and you must be able to look at how the rotations work with airlines and their staff.
Yes.
And the kind of movement. So the airline will definitely look for a quarantine center from within which the staff.
Yes.
So we really don't want to look at a situation whereby you want to treat your staff in a way that they may feel they're not being appreciated. And as we've always said, it is not because of the is not performing well. It has to do a lot. It has a lot to do with the leasing of planes and all those things. So if we have to save, and if it has to turn around its business to become profitable, you have to look away from the staff costs,
yes,
which is excuse actually, and look at the other fixed costs that the airline is incurring that can be able to be adjusted downwards so that it can become profitable. We cannot always focus on the employees and the salaries they receive and the benefits they receive as an excuse to sack people, to lay off people, so that organizations can be able to be profitable.
Yes.
It actually never works.
So let me just point you back to what the plan was, Enoch, for KQ, because we did know Treasury did actually turn down their request for 7.5 billion loan back when the coronavirus pandemic had hit the country, and told them, but we can't give you that because there's a plan on the table, and they were given a deadline, October, for the renationalization of the airline. There was a bill that was also fronted to Parliament just for approval so that we could transition KQ into a state agency. But now, Enoch, we haven't seen any announcement from that. Do you think that the coronavirus pandemic made it worse? Because even during this time is when the airline also incurred deeper losses and expenses just trying to stay afloat.
No, I think the focus for the last 10 months or so has been on how we can be able to fight the pandemic. And
yes,
there are so many issues to our priority, sometimes in January or February, that actually had to take a backseat.
yes,
Probably that is one of the issues. And now that business is starting to turn around, and of course normal operations starting, I think probably the discussion now can be able to start on. I'm one person who is an opponent of renationalization. We've all pushing for privatization, and but for the airlines it has become a bit critical because Kenya Airways is operating in an environment with airlines that are actually government. Ethiopian Airlines, look at Fly Emirates, look at Rwanda Air. Those are airlines that are backed by their governments and competitive because they are not getting the kind of the capital injection that can be able to help them compete in that environment.
yes.
So we just hope that because it was a national carrier before, we privatized it, and we've realized that it's actually not working. We just hope that we can be.
Yes, we seem to have lost Enoch when he was making his last statement on the chances for renationalizing KQ, and we're waiting to see exactly what announcement we are going to get from the government on that plan. But that notwithstanding, we still have more issues that we're going to look at this morning as well on our economic review. Let's just cross over to the next issue, and the question is going to be, is Kenya ready for a digital currency? All right, now let's go back to that. And Enoch, I can see you back. I just want to get your final sentiments on that as well. So you're saying, what are your hopes for the airline?
Definitely, our hope is for renationalization because competing has become a challenge.
Yes.
And we've tried it from 1996. It's almost 24 years now, and we are facing a situation whereby KQ may actually be able to be dissolved if the government does not come in strongly and intervene. So for us to be able to compete across the world, because we love KQ, it's one of the brands that make this country actually proud. The government has to look for a way they can be able to inject enough cash to turn around the business so that we can be able to compete not only in Africa but in the rest of the world, because now we have actually flights to the US and other regions.
Pretty much. All right, I beg to move to the next issue that we have for you this morning. Now, the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, is in discussions with other global central banks on the possibilities of entering the digital currency space. Cryptocurrency, which has seen a big stress from what has been the success of Bitcoin, has already forced some governments to even regulate its use, like China, which is now among the leading nations in cryptocurrency chances in the economy. Now, the CBK governor speaking on the sidelines of the Georgetown's DC FinTech Week said, and I'm going to quote, "We are already having discussions with other global players in various ways around the introduction of the central bank digital currencies. The push comes as a result of mushrooming of private cryptocurrencies, and we are already feeling left out and need to create our own space," end quote. It continues to add, and I quote, "The space for cryptocurrencies needs to be well mapped out so as to address such concerns as money laundering and financing of illicit activities," end quote. This morning, to help us understand Kenyan chances at digital currency and where we are right now with the Bitcoin advancements in the country as well, we are joined by Alice Nangi, crypto trader and founder Zidane Technologies. Alice, before I come to you, I want to look at what the Bitcoin value is currently, even as we speak now, because it actually did cross the $13,000 mark, with experts saying that we might see 20,000. Fine. And I want to start from there. Are we just about to see $20,000 mark?
Well, Simba, that's speculation, yeah, based on history data. But for sure, we have actually been doing very, very well. Yeah, for the past 2 months, we've seen the price rise all the way from 10,000.
Yes.
Right now, we've seen highs of up to 13,400. Yeah.
Yes.
In just a span of between 8 and 10 weeks. Yeah. So we are doing very, very well with all the positive news, with all the governments now, working together, getting into the digital currency space. We have really huge bodies, supporting the space, and all this positive news has actually led us to a bull trend. Yeah, we've been quite bullish for the past few weeks.
Yes.
And we actually are very, very positive on where the price is headed within the next few weeks. Yeah. So
Yes.
if we look at history, we have another level at 14,000, we have another level at 16,000, and for sure 20,000, yeah, is actually where most of us now are looking at in the long run.
I want to ask you, Alice, though, about this announcement, therefore, from our CBK Governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, that, digital currency for Kenya is not that far away, because they're saying, well, we are feeling left out. What would that mean for the already established cryptocurrencies in the country, like Bitcoin, which has really taken a hold of the Kenyan economy?
Well, like I've just told you, yeah, it's very positive news for us, yeah.
Yes.
Because as much as the central banks are getting into it, they will get into it from a different aspect, yeah.
I see.
Right now, when we look at the private digital currency space, how we look at it, what are some of the challenges that it's solving, yeah? First and foremost, speculatively, as we look at it, it's already a store of value, yeah?
Yes.
From how we look at the price have been going with all the technicals and fundamentals attached to it, yeah? Most of people who have invested in it have actually very positive information to say about it, yeah? So there are other challenges that it's been solving, like cross-border transactions, yeah? It's taken the power of finances back to the people, yeah? You hold your money in your wallets. You can track the transactions. They're very open on the ledger. The cost is cut off, of all intermediaries. So there are current problems and challenges that the crypto space has already solved for the private investors. But now the central banks will come at it from a different perspective, yeah? What challenges will they be solving that are currently present in the financial system, and they can actually use this technology in a positive way, yeah, to impact, yeah, now the greater public, yeah? So it's going to be on a totally different perspective from what now the private sector has looked at it. But it's very positive news for the private sector. Bitcoin is on the bull run. It will continue. There are many use cases that are coming up. There are many big entities that are coming on board. So it's very positive news for the private crypto space.
I want to ask you this as well, Alice. I mean, Kenyan government has been known to be quite tough, especially when talking about currency outflows from our economy. Do you think that they will sort of try and regulate deeply, come into this space and sort of stifle the sort of, I would say, independence that you have right now in this market?
Well, I think we can look at it from a way that they have a place to play. Yeah?
Yes.
The governments have a role to play in as far as the digital currency space is concerned. Yeah.
Yes.
We do have positive sides and we do have negative sides. Yeah. Right now, the biggest challenge that we are currently facing in the private cryptocurrency space is cyber security. Yeah. There's a lot of cyber crime. Yeah, as mentioned, yeah, you can't control what people, and equally it's the same thing even with the fiat system. Yeah, there are those who do use it for the positive and there are those who use it for the negative. Yeah, so right now in the digital currency space, yeah, if the governments want to play a very positive position in as far as this is concerned, yeah, let them put systems and measures in place to be able to track some of these illicit transactions that may be happening. Yeah, in as far as regulation is concerned, I think we do need it. We can look at it from a perspective that it's needed in some level, yeah, but it may end up beating the whole essence of blockchain technology, which is decentralization. Yeah. So we need to find a balance. At the end of it all, we need to see a lot of collaboration between central banks. We need to see even collaboration between central banks and commercial banks, local commercial banks, to be able to find a way to regulate in such a way that it brings out more of the positives and cuts down more of the negatives.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Now for Alice, as we clear this.
Simba,
Yes.
I think before we continue,
Yes.
there's just something I want to mention, and I just want to, of course, warn my sister
Yes.
on the negative effects of regulation, especially from the central bank.
Yes.
I know cryptocurrency it's a new thing here, and we of course all of us are gearing towards having it actually be mainstream. Its use in the country, but when it comes to regulation and when you look at technology and innovation, we are really trying to see how we can be able to have regulations following the kind of innovation that we expect to come in such markets. Because if central bank comes strongly and wants to regulate cryptocurrency the way they are regulating use of the currencies that we have in the country, you may actually find yourself being phased out of the market. Today at 12:30, I'll be appearing before the Parliamentary Committee on Finance,
Yes.
trying to fight the Central Bank Amendment Act, which looks at, of course, trying to regulate the digital lenders, which has been a very big discussion in the country. So I just hope that as Alice and the team welcome regulation from the central bank, they also, of course, have to be alive to the fact that some of those regulations will have a very negative effect on the operation of the cryptocurrency in the country, and the kind of benefits that they expect to receive, the kind of penetration that they expect to have in the market may be affected. So they have to really look at how they can be able to have a sectoral approach, a discussion around the regulation, so that we don't end up losing the point when it comes to allowing digital currencies to come into the country and trying to, of course, excite the e-commerce that has been booming in the country and the use of the digital currency in the country.
Pretty much. Let's just, before I let you go this morning, so that I can continue with Enoch. I mean, you've seen that's exactly what Enoch is saying, and I would like to call it the China way. Do you see us going the China way, where we're even regulating the use of digital currencies in the economy, where you have to wait for the government to direct you on exactly how you're going to go on with your business?
Well, I think China, it's not in a way where you're putting it, regulating it, yeah, because they do have their own private network of cryptocurrencies
Yes.
that run in their own system, yeah.
Yes.
So what now the Chinese government have done, they've actually developed their own digital yuan, yeah.
Yes.
They've released about 10 million worth of digital yuan to random people, yeah, about 50,000 people, and they've put systems in place to be able to now track these transactions, to be able to include it in the system, you know. So it's not in a way that they're completely regulating it and, putting stringent measures, but they are in a phase where they're trying to test how this system will work together with now the already existing financial system as is. Yeah, and they already do have their own private business people and business owners who are running the entire crypto space. So we have to look at it from that perspective also. When we're introducing our own digital currency, we have to think ahead. Yeah, the
Pretty
central
much.
bank, if they're releasing their own, they have to put now like a dry run. Yeah, they have to select a number of people to test these things. They have to now put regulations for businesses to start accepting this payment, yeah, as a known payment in the system. And from there, now we can move on. Yeah.
Pretty much. Alice, thank you very much for joining us this morning on this cryptocurrency conversation. All right, let's sort of move on to the last issue that we have for you this morning. Now, Auditor General Nancy Gathungu, in the latest audit report, indicated that the utility firm is at the end of June last year still holding 922 million shillings in its books against the requirements of Unclaimed Financial Assets Act of 2011. Now, according to Ms. Gathungu, the unclaimed assets ought to have been surrendered to the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Now, her warning, read that, and I quote, although the management is confident that the outstanding balance will drop following the ongoing review and audit of assets, this aspect of non-compliance may cost the company up to 1.7 billion in interest and penalties as of June 30th, 2019. Now, the value of unclaimed assets is 3.5 times the 262 million net profit that the electricity distributor made in the year under review. Now, the law allows UFAA to charge any entity that fails to surrender unclaimed assets a penalty of 25% of the assets held. In addition, UFAA also charges a penalty of between 7,000 and 50,000 shillings each day that the assets stayed before being submitted. Good. That's where we're coming from. Now, Enoch, Kenya Power's unclaimed assets are more than the profits of the company posted last posted. Is there a relation between these two? And what does it make you feel, from what you said it this morning, where an agency is bound to be fined more than 5 times the amount of profit it's turning in?
Thank you, Simba. There is no relation between the profits and the unclaimed assets, because when you look at the components of the unclaimed assets, it adds electricity deposits, wage compensations, and such. So some of these payments are payments to people who had to lose their land so that KPLC can be able to set up, and some of them are deposits that we put in for post-paid connections, and probably people have moved to prepaid and they have never been paid back to them. The challenge that we have is that when you look at KRA is holding so much money for businesses as credits that are supposed to be refunded. And the president came in strongly and said, we must look for a way of refunding this money to businesses. Here is now another case of a company called Kenya Power holding 922 million shillings of Kenyan shillings, money that belongs to the Kenyans and businesses that they should have been refunded to them. I mean, when you open an account with KPLC, you of course leave your documentation. Why would we still have a case of unclaimed assets at KPLC? And yet KPLC should be making efforts to ensure that these monies are refunded to people. I mean, when you look at the kind of challenges that we've gone through for the last 8 or so months because of Corona, this is money that could have come in handy to help families. But here they're still being held as unclaimed assets. And it's still also wrong for KPLC not to have transferred this money to the authority, which was formed to actually deal with such specific cases of monies being held by entities that belong to the Kenyans, but they're not able to trace them to be able to give them the money. So in cases of being penalized, penalties come, of course, because people are not following laws, and of course it's wrong for KPLC to have done that. But let me take you back to the cash flow statement of KPLC.
Yes.
Forget about the profits. As at 30th June 2019, KPLC had a negative cash flow of 5.4 billion shillings. So you can be able to see that when it comes to, they might have been profitable, but they're operating on very huge negative cash flows. So the reason why probably they're still holding these unclaimed assets as a liability in their balance sheet is because they do not have the money to be able to pay those unclaimed assets. And they just hope that they can be able to buy time until such a time that they can be able to get money to be able to pay them. But we just hope that over time, they can be able to sort this out, because there's no need of holding a liability in your balance sheet of monies that belong to individuals who actually need those monies to be able to survive on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, Enoch, does this therefore point out to just a management issue at KPLC? Because then it's as if we're not getting the right picture of where they are.
It definitely, Simba. When you open a KPLC account, you normally make a payment.
Yes.
You give your ID number, you give your KRA PIN, and all those details. And considering that we now currently have a digital system where the government shares data, KPLC can be able to trace these people and pay them off. So it's an issue of management holding back until such a time when they can be able to have $1 billion shillings in loose cash to be able to pay off these unclaimed assets, which I know for sure KPLC does not have. Remember, they were actually penalized the other day by KenGen for delaying to pay for power that they had taken from them. So it just shows you how the kind of challenges that KPLC is facing, considering that the government is coming in strongly to regulate the prices of power, and KPLC wants to be profitable. They find themselves in a situation whereby they can actually not be able to operate in the market because they want to make profits. At the same time, there's so much regulation in terms of how they can get power from GDC, how they can get power from KenGen, and how they have to engage companies like Kentraco and still make profits from the customers who are the end users.
Pretty much. Enoch Manari, Managing Partner, Nyonchoga and Associates, thank you very much for joining us this morning for this conversation, sir.
Thank you, Sim.
We take a short break. Once we come back, let's continue with Business AM Business.